we were just working on the record, and it was like here and there I'd go back down, and then he moved to the studio, and it just became this like, oh, cool, let's do another jam, let's do this song. And I mean, there are 15 or 16 songs that we worked on specifically like with the intent of releasing, and we're down to 13. And one of the is the one that I worked on with Scott Simons and Ted, and the guitarist from Juniper Lane. The guitarist from Juniper Lane had this guitar riff that the band Juniper Lane didn't want to use, and so I was like, can I have that? Can I work a song up around that guitar riff? And I did, and kind of the traditional, like, had this produced song, and then it took me forever to finish the lyrics, and I sent it back to Juniper. I was like, hey, you guys want to do this? And it was like, no, that's not really us. And then been working on that with Scott on and off, and Scott's really busy out in LA. And so it's just one of these things where it's like, hey, I got 30 minutes this weekend. I got a chance to work on this thing, and to send it back to me. And then I'm busy at that point with either the kids or doing whatever. And it's like, oh, I get to it. And then I'm like, oh yeah, hey, I finally, 2 months later, hey, I've got my thing done. Here it is again. What do you think about it? And that's just life. And when everyone's busy and there's not a pressing deadline. Right. So I think, being, cause during that time I worked on 2 HBA records, a No Second Troy record, and 3 Juniper Lane records. So it wasn't like I wasn't doing other recording. It was just, that was, and not to mention the other people I've, like Kelsey Henry's record that I produced, and people that I've mixed, and some of the jams I played on. So this has just kind of been that like thread that's existed back there. And it's like, oh yeah, I should go work on that song today.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting evolving process, and it's hilarious. If you look back at 2004, 16 years now, and somebody, one of the friends of the band for Juniper Lane is a guy named Tom Rail, and he's like, is this going to beat Chinese democracy or not? The answer's no.
Oh my God.
So he always gives me a rub every time I run into him. He's like, hey, how you doing? How's that record?
Props for keeping at it.
Yeah. Well, and so much of this,
flame for a while.
So much of it, like most of this was mixed and in the can, and back from mastering in 2014.
So what was the last 6 years?
Working on like the 1 or 2 jams that didn't make the record, which is the hilarious part about this, right? So it's just like, oh, we should do this song's amazing. We got to work on this song, and then you're like, nope. And then so we did the cover songs a couple years back. Those were recent. And we also, at the time we did the cover songs, we were down in Savannah, and we did a video for Clean Lines with Ryan Downing, who's just an amazing musician and video creative guy. And then we also Ted recently he does a lot of video work too. And so Ted and Rich and I did a video for Selling Stars. And that should be coming out pretty soon with the record. So just
amazing. When's the record due?
That's a great question. Like we were planning for like a South by Southwest release, and then all this stuff started happening, and we kind of just put a pause on it. So we're putting the final touches on the artwork right now, and we'll be putting it in. So it should be. We're at what, early June right now. I'm hoping it should be out by mid-July at the latest. But
all right,
that's kind of have to at a point we just have to. We're done with it, so it's just a matter of like push.
Yeah, totally. Wait, so I guess tell me a little bit more about how you stay fresh and creative in your workspace. Like, how do you stay motivated?
When I hit a wall, I do something else. That's the number one thing. If I'm sitting there and I'm trying and it's just not happening, I literally just put the guitar down and I go for a walk, or I will sit there and I'll pick up a different instrument. Is one of the easiest ways. If it's a mental block, I love the Oblique Strategies cards, just to totally mess with myself. And just Brian Eno and another gentleman put this deck of cards together, and it's weird phrases on them. And I think you can even get an app for your phone now that's like the thing, but it's like the physical deck. Apparently the rumor story around how they got popular was Joshua Tree with U2 and Eno's producing, and U2 cannot get the 6/8 to 4/4 change from the intro down. and the rumor is that he pulled the card, and one of the cards at the time said erase the tape, and so he went over and very Brian Eno, super calm, chill, decided to put the tape on, and Flood is in the room. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm erasing the tape. Just matter of fact, I don't know if this story is true, but it fits all of their personalities so well, and Flood has talked about the erase the tape part on interviews, so I think it's true. But he basically claims that he had to tackle Brian Eno. And Eno, of course, is like, no, it wasn't that serious. But that's, it's just kind of one of those things like, and some of them are just totally, they could be applied to anything. It's like faster with more feeling. All right, let's take that again, faster with more feeling, see what happens. It's just something that like, I'm so caught up in a loop that I can't break. Those are usually the thing I'll go to. But a lot of times it's just to say, I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to go read a book. I'm going to go play with the kids. I'm going to go work on the farm. I'm going to go do whatever. Anything different to kind of, and usually your mind is working in the background and it'll figure out what is wrong. And you come back in and then you're like, oh, now I got it. Now we're working. Because too often, if I can sit here for 8 hours just staring at the screen, not understanding what's going wrong. So I usually will just say, not this morning, and try something else and come back in the afternoon.
Nice. Do you have any favorite creative tools?
I love sketching song ideas in Ableton. Honestly, I think it's probably it has become my go-to thing where I feel that I can just pull things together really quickly, especially with the loop-based kind of architecture there.
Yeah. That
has become my go-to. And so I'll just play. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll just say, I'm just going to experiment with this new synth or I've never used this particular drum kit before. And I'm going to really just try and use it and for everything on this thing. So what can I, really run through all the paces, and that sometimes generates something cool and sometimes generates something you're just like, that's interesting, but it's never going to be a song. It's just a cool little noise experiment, fun toy thing.
So how do you like get yourself in the studio? Like you're juggling a day job and like multiple kinds of audio projects.
Right.
Like how do you decide? Okay, I'm getting to the studio on like Monday, and how do you do that?
Well, one of the things that my wife and I did is set up music night. So I have a night each week that I'm going into the studio and 3-4 hours of undisturbed whatever. And if everyone goes to sleep, I can just keep going. The benefit is I'm like my office / studio is in the barn at our farm. So I turned the tack room into a studio / workspace. So I can actually go to work or go to the studio, and it's not something where, everything's the noise of the house isn't around, and it's more difficult for somebody to come over and visit. You have to step outside and then go over, and it's more conscious as opposed to just walking down the hall and opening the door.
Yeah.
So that does help a lot. That definitely helps. I think the other things that are good are just like, if again, and likewise, if I'm burnt out, if I'm hitting a wall with work, because I work remote, and my hours are kind of weird too. Like I'll work I'll do some work in the morning and then I'm working late at night as well. I'm not necessarily just 9 to 5 on my work day. It kind of is in fits and starts as, if I'm waiting on a review or I'm working with people, I'm working with some people in Texas and some people in Tel Aviv. And so, on all that, you get different timelines with different people pinging you. So just having that, it's like, okay, well, I'm working from 6 to 9 this morning, and then I'm going to do something different while I wait for feedback on this. And so lots of times I'll just turn around, pick up the guitar for 30 minutes and come back, instead of it's kind of a nice little just break.
That's great that you have also that flexibility and also that discipline, I guess.
I'm sitting here in a recording studio. It would be very easy. I mean, there is a wall of kind of between me. We're also in the middle of doing some house changes, so I've got a lot of stuff from the house in here. So some boxes, but normally I kind of have made that a pod to itself. I've got, I kind of wrap around. I've got a sidecar over here. And I've got, just some other, I've got some other stuff in a horizontal or diagonal rack, some Dizengoff pre's and some stuff like that. And then I've got a mini whirly here that I bought a couple years ago. So that kind of creates like a nice little wall where I have to walk around it. It's just, I can't just turn around and I'm in the studio. Like I have to walk into the studio, if that kind of makes sense.
Totally. So, as an artist, what do you think is the most important thing to be doing in, 2020, aside from like the pandemic stuff?
Oh, geez.
What do you think is important for artists to be doing these days?
So on a purely selfish artistic side of things, I think everyone has to be a little more open to changing up their sound, trying new things, because it's very easy to get stuck in a rut and put out the same record over and over again. And so even the producers, a lot of the pop producers, it's becoming this kind of just, there's very little truly interesting original stuff that pops out. And there are a couple of people that really kind of take something old and bring it to a new light. I mean, I think some great examples like Uptown Funk, when that came out, you were just like, this is like classic Michael Jackson, but updated in a weird, I mean, this is like, is Quincy Jones behind the board here? What's going on? And things like that, you know, that was interesting. That was exciting. You hadn't heard those kind of vibes and a bass line just kicking out like that in a while.
Yeah.
And that was exciting. But then you have the stuff where you just like, you know, a lot of the stuff like, sorry to single her out, but Katy Perry just jumped to mind. But like some of the songs, you're just like, this could be anybody. It's not. It doesn't have this like uniqueness to it. Like if I sit there and if you tell me, you know, one of my favorite bands is like Broken Social Scene, that has a sound. A song by Broken Social Scene doesn't sound like anyone else. Likewise, somebody like The National, you don't hear many people with that kind of baritone, with that interesting texture and stuff going on. Yeah, there's other indie bands that are in that vein, but
right,
you hear him start singing that, you know, like you just, you know, Fake Empire, for example, and you're just like, that's The National. You know, it's just got that vibe. And so like, I don't know. It seems to me that most of the stuff that is popular is as cookie cutter and formulaic as we can get. And it's gotten to a point where it's so well understood technically how to do that people get stuck in doing exactly that. We're going to follow this formula. We're going to make an amazing hit song, and it probably will be an amazing hit song. It will hit the radio and it will sell. And I don't know. It feels just kind of soulless. So I mean, I wish more artists were out there pushing the limits and almost failing. Like go out there, put out a record, make a record, not just a song, make a record again.
Amen.
And then I think it's important too, just as people that we're out there, we're understanding, you know, that our viewpoint is not everyone's viewpoint. That's, I think, something as you get older, you start to, you know, that really comes in, and being able to understand those stories, share those stories, support those people. I think that's just something about you know, there is definitely a social awakening happening right now, and something that we can all do better at is just understanding and listening.
So, you know, I guess more on like a production level, less on an artistic level. What's one thing that when you were getting started you didn't know about but that you wish you knew about? Like what's...
Oh, geez. Name your tracks.
Name your tracks.
Audio 1, audio 2, audio 3.
Oh my God. No. Don't tell me that.
So no, that was, I mean, that literally was one of those things where I think when I first took a session down, you know, for my Digio 1, it was Rich or it was Matt, I don't remember, they were like, let me give you a pointer. Name your tracks. No, that's always the thing. Is the first time somebody's using it, they don't necessarily think, you know, because it's not necessarily that you can change the name on the track. That's fine, but then you got all the pieces of audio that are still named audio 1 or audio 2.
Right. Yeah. Have it named before you start recording.
Exactly.
That's an important one.
Yes, it is. An evergreen rule.
Totally.
I think it's also, don't be afraid of not having the technology. I think people get hung up, I sure did, on saying, well, I don't have this mic or this compressor or this thing. And you can make amazing music without having all this stuff. And I mean, there's a lot of things that I have that I haven't touched in years, and I'm now kind of like, I should just let somebody else have that. Maybe that, you know, somebody that wants it and needs it, because it's just taking up space in my rack. And yeah, it's really cool looking, but it's not doing anything. So you can get a mic, like I'm just using an SM7, right? You know, good old standard radio mic, couple $100, you know, but people singing SM58s on, I mean, Bono does SM58s in the control room. That's his vocal.
Really?
Yeah. Like literally in the control room with an SM58. Like, I mean, like it's, you know, that's, yeah, that guy's really talented. Okay.
But, you don't need the U87.
No, I mean, if you have it, great. But you don't, like, I think there's definitely at least on the producer side. I mean, you know, we're all sitting there, we're flipping through Tape Op and we're, you know, we're looking at all these, you know, high-end studios online and all these things like that. And it's like, oh my God, that's this amazing processor. And especially with all the new stuff coming out that kind of goes back to those old things. Like people have now, like Warm Audio is doing some amazing work, you know, and some other people where they've got like, yeah, you can buy basically a faithful recreation of a 670 and it's, you know, 1/10 the price. It's still $3,000. Do you really need that, or will the plugin suffice? Plugin gets me pretty close. I'm going to go with the plugin.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. And listen, like you got people like Billie Eilish winning the Grammys,
right.
And
yeah. And
made in a bedroom, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, people forget that made in the bedroom doesn't mean that it was finished in the bedroom. Like,
it wasn't finished in the bedroom, and also there was a lot of work that went into it.
Right.
It wasn't just you know, the first recording of some kid.
Yeah.
But but still, what the gear isn't what made that record.
Totally, and it's and it's having the creative people involved with that. She's in. I mean, I'm not a